Welcome back to the Real Life English podcast. Let me ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with yourself as you think about the answer to this.
Okay, I'm ready.
Why do we care so much about what other people think of us?
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it is one of the most universally relatable questions out there. It's something every single one of us grapples with on a daily and honestly, sometimes hourly basis.
Definitely hourly for some of them.
Exactly. And right at the center of it is this massive, glaring contradiction because logically, intellectually, if you ask any of us, we know the quote unquote right answer.
Right. We know the advice we're supposed to
Yeah,
give.
we know the exact advice we'd give to a friend. We know we should just, be ourselves. It is practically a cultural mantra at this point. Just be you. Don't worry about the noise. Ignore the haters.
Yeah, we see it on bumper stickers and Instagram posts everywhere.
But emotionally,
Hmm.
in the actual moment of lived experience, when you are, say, standing in front of a group of people, or when you're about to hit send on a risky text, it is never, ever that simple.
No, it really isn't. It really is the ultimate disconnect
Yeah.
between our rational brain and our emotional reality.
Yeah. Okay.
Because we've surrounded ourselves with all these wonderful, empowering slogans about independence and self-actualization.
Yeah.
But the moment we step out the front door, or the moment we hit publish on a piece of content, or even just walk into a crowded room, all that perfect and sound logic just completely evaporates.
It just vanishes.
It does. We instantly enter a space where we are hyper aware of the eyes on us, and we actively state that we don't care, right? We wear it as a badge of honor.
Oh, totally. I really don't care what anyone thinks of me.
People love to say that.
Yeah.
But the underlying psychological reality, the absolute truth of the human condition, is that we do. We
Yeah.
care deeply, and we are obsessively monitoring the reactions of everyone around us.
Which is exactly what we are pulling apart in today's deep dive. We are looking at a mountain of research dissecting the psychology of social approval.
And there's a lot of it.
So much. And the mission here is to understand the hidden power that external validation holds over us. We want to figure out why a simple passing comment from an acquaintance,
Or even a stranger.
yeah, a strange or judgmental look from a stranger on the street, or sometimes, most devastatingly, absolute silence from the people we are trying to connect with. Why can that hold such an immense amount of power over our internal equilibrium?
It's a great question.
I mean, how can something so completely intangible dictate our mood for an entire week?
I was thinking about this logical versus emotional disconnect, and the best way I can describe it is like a physical reflex.
A reflex, like a biological response.
Exactly. Think about being at the doctor's office. You were sitting on the edge of the examination table. The paper is crinkling under you.
I can hear the sound in my head right now.
Right, and the doctor takes out that little rubber triangle hammer to test your reflexes. Now, logically, you know the hammer is not a threat.
Right. You know it will not hurt you. You can sit there and literally instruct your brain, do not move your leg, keep your leg perfectly still.
Good luck with that.
Right, because the second that hammer taps your patellar tendon, your leg kicks. Your body reacts automatically, entirely bypassing your conscious logical thought process.
It doesn't even ask for permission.
No. The signal goes to your spinal cord and straight back out to the muscle before your brain even registers what happened. And that is exactly what happens with social judgment.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
You can tell yourself not to flinch. You can build up all these logical, philosophical defenses. But when a sudden movement happens, like someone's silence when you expected praise, or a slightly judgmental furrowing of the eyebrows during a meeting, your mind and your body react. You flinch emotionally before your logic can even tie its shoes.
That is, I mean, the reflex analogy actually maps perfectly onto the neurobiology of what is happening. Yeah, absolutely. Because a reflex is, at its core, a protective mechanism. It's your nervous system bypassing the slower cognitive processing centers of your prefrontal cortex to keep you safe from immediate harm.
Okay, so speed is the point.
Exactly.
Mm.
If you touch a hot stove, you don't want to spend 3 seconds logically deducing that the heat is damaging your tissue. You want your hand to pull back instantly.
Right, or you're getting burned.
Right. And what the research into social psychology and neurobiology shows us is that our reaction to social judgment operates on that exact same primal level. It is a survival reflex.
But that is where I think people get stuck. We beat ourselves up for caring too much.
Oh, constantly.
We view it as a personal failing. We think, if I were just stronger, if I had more self-esteem, if I had gone to therapy more, I wouldn't let their opinion bother me. We frame caring about the opinions of others as a modern emotional weakness.
And that is the biggest misconception we need to dismantle right here at the start. To understand why we care, we have to completely stop looking at ourselves in the vacuum of the modern world.
We have to zoom out.
Way out. We have to look backward. We are fundamentally biologically social beings, and we need to put that into its proper evolutionary context.
Okay, let's go there.
Because today, if someone says they are, social, we think it means they like going to parties.
Right, or they're good at networking, or they enjoy hosting dinner parties.
Exactly. It's treated as a personality preference. You're an introvert or you're an extrovert. But in our evolutionary history, depending on others was absolutely not a personality trait. It was the sole, non-negotiable prerequisite for survival.
So we are talking about human beings on the African savanna hundreds of thousands of years ago, the ancestral environment where our brains actually evolved.
Yes, the Pleistocene epoch. If you imagine the conditions early humans faced, a single human being, isolated on the savanna, is remarkably vulnerable.
I mean, we're pretty soft targets.
We really are. We don't have thick hides to protect us from the elements. We don't have venom. We don't have the speed of a cheetah to run away or the strength of a bear to fight back.
Just our brains.
Just our brains and each other. Our singular evolutionary advantage. The only reason we survived and essentially conquered the planet was our ability to cooperate.
Right.
It was our capacity to share resources, to communicate danger, to hunt in coordinated packs, and to protect one another's vulnerable young. In that environment, being accepted by a group was quite literally essential for staying alive.
So the stakes weren't just about feeling like awkward at a tribal gathering.
No, the stakes were life and death.
Hmm.
If the group decided they didn't like you,
Or if they found you untrustworthy.
were untrustworthy or annoying or burdensome, or if you didn't share your portion of the hunt, they could exile you. And exile was a death sentence.
Wow.
You would starve, or you would be eaten by a predator. There was no going off into the woods to live your truth as a rugged individualist.
No finding yourself on a solo backpacking trip.
Exactly. The individuals who survived and passed on their genes to us were the ones who cared deeply obsessively, even about what the rest of the group thought of them. They had to constantly monitor their social standing.
Like, are the elders pleased with me? Did I share enough meat? Am I pulling my weight?
Is anyone whispering about me by the fire? All of that.
And the ones who didn't care, like the ancient humans who just wanted to be independent and ignore the haters.
They got kicked out of the cave, they died alone, and their genetic lines ended. So the research makes this incredibly validating point. Caring about others' opinions is a built-in instinct. It is a piece of evolutionary hardware.
It's the exact mechanism that allowed our ancestors to survive.
Yes, we are the descendants of the most socially anxious, hypervigilant apes on the savanna.
Okay, that is a massive paradigm shift. Because it completely removes the guilt we carry around today. It translates into this intense psychological need to belong, which explains why feeling unaccepted isn't just mildly annoying.
No, it's visceral.
It feels deeply uncomfortable and honestly physically painful. If social rejection equals literal death to our primitive brains, then of course our bodies are going to sound a massive, painful alarm bell when we feel rejected. The brain is screaming, "Warning! You are being pushed out of the tribe. Fix this immediately or you will die."
And, it is not just a metaphor to say it is painful. This is where the neurobiology gets really fascinating.
Oh, I love this part.
The distress of social isolation or judgment lights up the exact same neural pathways in the brain as physical injury.
Literally the same pathway.
Exact same ones. There is a region in the brain called the anterior cingulate cortex, or the ACC. The ACC is heavily involved in processing the distressing emotional component of physical pain.
So it's not the part that feels the physical impact, but the part that makes it feel awful?
Exactly. When you stub your toe, the nerves send a signal, but it is the ACC that makes you feel the suffering of it, the ouch part that makes you upset.
Okay, so the ACC makes physical pain feel terrible.
Right. Well, neuroscientists wanted to see what happens in the brain when we experience social rejection. There's a very famous study, often referred to as the Cyberball experiment, led by a researcher named Naomi Eisenberger.
Cyberball?
Cyberball. They put participants in an fMRI machine, which, as you know, scans brain activity in real time.
Right.
And the participants were told they're playing a simple digital game of catch with two other real people in different rooms. On a screen, they saw two avatars tossing a digital ball back and forth and occasionally tossing it to the participant.
Okay, sounds innocent enough. Just a little digital catch.
Initially, yes. very boring, actually.
Mhm.
But the other two quote-unquote players weren't real. It was a computer program.
Ah, a trick.
Yes. And after a few minutes of fair play, the computer was programmed to stop throwing the ball to the participant. The two avatars just threw it back and forth to each other, completely excluding the real human who was lying there inside the fMRI machine.
Oh my gosh. It is the most basic elementary school level of social rejection you can imagine, not being picked for the team.
It really is.
I'm already feeling anxious just picturing it. What did the brain scans actually show?
The moment the participant realized they were being excluded, their anterior cingulate cortex lit up like a Christmas tree.
Wow.
The exact same region of the brain that registers the agony of a broken leg or a burned hand was firing intensely just because some digital avatars wouldn't throw them a ball. Your brain processes social rejection as physical trauma.
That is wild.
And it gets crazier. They even did follow-up studies showing that over-the-counter painkillers, like Tylenol, can actually reduce the emotional sting of social rejection.
Wait, really? Tylenol?
Yes, because they are dulling the same pain centers in the brain.
That is mind-blowing. Tylenol for a broken heart, literally.
Literally.
But wait, let me push back on this a little bit, or at least ask the question that naturally arises here.
Sure, go ahead.
If this is just a natural survival instinct, a brilliant evolutionary tool that kept us alive on the savannah, why does it feel so incredibly detrimental to us today? I mean, we are not running from saber-toothed tigers anymore. Why hasn't evolution caught up? If we are physically safe, why is this ancient hardware still causing us so much grief?
Well, you are hitting on the concept of an evolutionary mismatch.
An evolutionary mismatch.
Yes, biological evolution is incredibly slow. It takes hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of years to fundamentally alter our neurological hardware. But human culture, technology, and society have evolved at lightning speed, particularly in the last couple of centuries.
So our brains are lagging behind.
Severely lagging. The environment we live in today is completely alien to the environment our brains were designed for.
So we are basically running ancient software on modern hardware?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or rather, we are running ancient software in a modern environment. Today, if someone at the office doesn't like your presentation, or someone on the street judges your outfit, or someone leaves a mean comment on your blog, you are not going to be cast out into the wilderness to starve.
Right. I can just go home, lock my door, and order takeout.
Exactly. You can go to the grocery store, you have shelter, you are physically perfectly safe.
Yeah.
But your brain doesn't know that.
So the brain still interprets the social slight as a life or death situation.
Yes. The brain interprets a strange look from a barista with the exact same primal alarm as a tribal elder threatening exile. And this leads to a massive modern problem.
Which is?
Because the threat feels existential. The instinct to belong is so powerful that it overrides our desire for authenticity.
Oh, wow.
We constantly monitor our environment, assess what the group deems acceptable, and then we prune away the parts of our personality that don't fit that mold.
Yeah.
To our primal brain, authenticity is a luxury, but belonging is survival. We trade who we really are for the safety of the herd.
We trade who we really are for the safety of the herd. That is really bleak.
It's the reality of the mismatch.
We are walking around with this ancient software running in the background, constantly scanning for threats to our social standing, terrified of a physical exile that will literally never come. And knowing that, it makes complete sense that when you introduce a technology explicitly designed to measure that exact approval, things are going to get completely out of hand.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
You definitely do. I'm talking about social media.
Of course.
Because think about it. We have this biological, uncontrollable hunger for acceptance, as you just explained. And then, over the last 20 years, we handed ourselves a machine that sits in our pockets and dispenses that acceptance in little glowing digital pellets.
It is the perfect psychological trap. Social media has taken our natural craving for acceptance and infinitely amplified it.
How so?
To understand how, we have to look at how approval worked for the vast majority of human history. As we just discussed with the savannah, approval was about a small tribe, and crucially, it was qualitative.
Qualitative, not quantitative.
Right. Approval was a vibe. It was a spoken word, a pat on the back, being invited to share a meal, or just a general feeling of warmth from your peers. It was something you felt.
It was ambiguous. You had to intuit it. There was no scoreboard.
Precisely. You had a general sense of your standing, but it wasn't mathematically precise. What social media has done is take this deeply nuanced, qualitative human experience and quantified it. It has made approval visible, numeric, and permanent.
Likes, comments, views, shares, retweets, follower counts.
Yes. We have literally turned social approval into cold, hard integers. And that changes the entire psychological dynamic of how our brains process it.
I want to dig into that because think about what happens when you put a number on something. It inherently becomes a game.
Always.
It becomes a competition, a metric to maximize. It's like walking around with a giant glowing scoreboard hovering over your head where every single social interaction is graded publicly in real time for everyone to see.
That's a terrifying image, but it's accurate.
If you go to a party and tell a joke, people might laugh, they might not. But if you post a joke online, you get a definitive, unarguable score. 17 people approved of this. 2,000 people approved of this. 0 people approved of this.
It's brutal.
If we are biologically wired to crave social approval, how could anyone not obsess over the score on that glowing scoreboard?
It is nearly impossible not to obsess. And that is not an accident. The quantification of approval taps directly into the neurobiology of variable rewards.
Variable reward. This goes back to B.F. Skinner and operant conditioning, right?
Exactly. Skinner found that if you put a pigeon in a box and give it a pellet of food, every single time it presses a lever, the pigeon will press it when it's hungry and then stop.
Yes. Makes sense.
But if you give the pigeon a pellet of food, sometimes when it presses the lever at random, unpredictable intervals, the pigeon will press the lever obsessively, continuously, until it drops from exhaustion.
Oh, because it never knows if the next press is the winner. That is exactly how slot machines work.
Exactly. It is a variable ratio reward schedule. And social media platforms are explicitly designed using this exact psychology. When you post a photo, you don't know how many likes you'll get. Will it be 10? Will it be 100? Will it go viral?
You have no idea.
The unpredictability creates a massive spike in dopamine anticipation. Dopamine isn't just about pleasure. It's about the anticipation of reward. And when the reward is tied to our deepest evolutionary need, social survival, the hook is incredibly deep.
So we are pulling the slot machine lever every time we refresh our feed, hoping the tribe still accepts us.
Yeah.
But there is another layer to this that makes it even worse, I think. We were talking about the tribe on the savannah. How big was that tribe, historically?
Anthropologists point to Dunbar's number. A British anthropologist named Robin Dunbar suggested that human beings have a cognitive limit to the number of people with whom they can maintain stable social relationships.
I know, what's the limit?
Based on the size of our neocortex, that number is roughly 150. For the vast majority of human history, your entire social world consisted of, at most, 150 people.
Okay, 150 people. Now compare that to a teenager today posting a video on TikTok, and suddenly 50,000 strangers are weighing in on her appearance, her tone of voice, her room in the background.
It's unfathomable to the primitive brain.
Our brains are not designed to process the judgment of 50,000 people. It is a massive sensory overload. It completely shorts out the threat detection system. If the brain interprets the disapproval of one tribesman as a threat, what happens when it processes the disapproval of 1,000 anonymous strangers?
It creates a state of chronic, low-grade hyperarousal. Your nervous system is constantly humming with anxiety. And the danger of this numbers game is that it creates a deeply unhealthy psychological state where we start to measure our entire personal worth based on these metrics.
Right.
When approval is just a vibe in a room of 150 people, you know it has context. You know that John is just grumpy today, or Mary disagrees with you but still loves you.
You have the nuance.
But when approval is a raw number from strangers, it feels objective. It feels like a mathematical truth about your value as a human being.
We literally equate the number with our value. If a post gets high engagement, you feel a massive spike in dopamine. Your brain signals that your social standing is secure, and you feel valuable. If it gets low engagement, or worse, if you see someone else's scoreboard glowing with much higher numbers than yours, your primal brain interprets that as a loss of status. You feel fundamentally inadequate.
It becomes dangerously easy to outsource your self-worth to an algorithm. You are no longer deciding if you are a good, interesting, or valuable person based on your character or your actions in the physical world. You are letting quantified metrics, designed by tech engineers in Silicon Valley, decide your worth for you.
And the scoreboard never turns off. You go to sleep, and the algorithm is still tallying. You wake up, and the first thing you check is your score. People literally check their phones before their feet hit the floor in the morning.
Almost everyone does.
Their nervous system is hit with a stress response. You know, how did the tribe judge me while I was sleeping? before they even brush their teeth. It is an exhausting treadmill, and the goalposts constantly move. What felt like a good number last year feels like a failure today.
But there is a darker side to this dopamine hit. Chasing likes is exhausting, sure. But what really keeps people up at night isn't the lack of likes. It is the absolute terror of the digital mob.
The fear of the crowd turning on you.
Yes, the pursuit of the positive is actually secondary to a much deeper, more powerful drive. The frantic attempt to avoid the negative.
Right. Because wanting to belong is just the shiny, socially acceptable side of the coin. The flip side is the paralyzing, terrifying fear of being judged.
Seeking approval and avoiding criticism might seem like the same thing, but psychologically, they are very different drivers. Seeking approval is about gaining status. Avoiding criticism is about preventing loss. And in human psychology, there's a fundamental principle called loss aversion.
This is Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky's work, right? Behavioral economics.
Exactly. Loss aversion states that the psychological pain of losing something is roughly twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining the exact same thing.
Okay, give me an example.
If you find a $10 bill on the street, you feel a little burst of joy. But if you lose a $10 bill from your wallet, you feel a disproportionate amount of irritation and upset. The pain of loss hits harder and lasts longer.
And how does that apply to social status?
It applies perfectly. The pain of losing social standing, of being criticized, mocked, or judged, is felt much more acutely than the pleasure of gaining a compliment. This is tied to another evolutionary concept called the negativity bias.
Negativity bias.
Our brains evolved to prioritize negative information over positive information because negative information is usually more critical for survival.
Oh, right. Like, if you hear a rustle in the tall grass, it is better to assume it is a tiger and be wrong than to assume it is just the wind and be eaten.
Precisely. You must pay attention to the threat. A compliment is nice, but doesn't keep you alive. A criticism, in the ancestral environment, meant you were in danger of exile. So our brains are literally wired like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones.
Velcro for the negative, Teflon for the positive. That is so painfully true. It explains why you can give a presentation at work, and 99 people can tell you it was brilliant, insightful, and perfectly delivered.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Right. But one person says, I thought it was a little long. And what do you think about when you are staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m.? You aren't thinking about the 99 compliments. You are obsessing over that one minor critique. You feel like the entire presentation was a failure.
Because your brain is treating that one critique as a threat to your survival within the corporate tribe. It is inherently interpreted as a deeply personal attack. It is not processed as objective feedback.
It feels like life or death.
It does. If someone says, I disagree with the data in your third slide, your brain doesn't rationally say, an interesting differing perspective on the data. Your heart rate spikes, your face gets hot, your amygdala fires, and you feel like they just insulted your core identity.
And this fear of judgment has incredibly tangible costs in the real world. It leads to rampant self-censorship. I was actually thinking about this yesterday. I caught myself doing this.
Oh, yeah. I have it.
I was drafting a tweet about a movie I had just seen, a very harmless, slightly contrarian opinion about the pacing of the film. I typed it out, it was perfectly reasonable, and then I sat there staring at it for 3 minutes.
Let me guess, you started imagining the replies.
Exactly. I started imagining the potential replies. I pictured someone misinterpreting my point, or some film bro coming into my mentions to call me an idiot. I felt a physiological wave of anxiety over a hypothetical argument about a fictional movie. So what did I do? I deleted it. I self-censored.
That is a perfect everyday example of how this fear alters our behavior. And it's not just online. We do this in the physical world constantly.
We'll hold back.
We hold back. We filter what we say in meetings. We change how we dress because we don't want to stand out too much. We hide the hobbies we pursue if we think they are weird. We restrict the opinions we voice around our families. It is a preemptive strike against judgment.
We figure, if I don't show them who I really am, they can't judge who I really am. If I stay quiet, I won't provoke a negative reaction from the group. But wait, isn't some level of self-censorship just called having manners? Or being socially calibrated? We shouldn't just blurt out every intrusive thought we have, right?
That is an important distinction for sure. Having manners, or being tactful, is about respecting the boundaries and feelings of others. It is about facilitating smooth social interactions. That is healthy. But what we are talking about here is identity suppression.
Identity suppression.
It is not about holding back an insult. It is about holding back your authentic self out of fear. By constantly holding back, we are trying to minimize our surface area for attack. We blend in. We become invisible to judgment.
But the cost is immense.
The cognitive load alone is exhausting. When you are constantly filtering your words and restricting your actions, you are expending a massive amount of mental and emotional energy playing a role. You are managing a PR avatar of yourself rather than just living.
Which makes me wonder, if we are constantly holding back our words and actions just to dodge criticism, are we actually protecting ourselves? Or are we just slowly erasing who we are?
We think we are protecting ourselves. The ego believes that by avoiding judgment, it is staying safe within the herd. But what are you actually protecting?
Right.
If the version of you that the world sees is a carefully curated, heavily filtered, entirely compromised facade designed solely to appease a hypothetical crowd, then the true you isn't being protected at all. It is being suffocated, is being erased by attrition.
You become a negative space. You are defined only by the things you are terrified to do.
Exactly. You become a reflection of what you think the group wants, rather than an autonomous individual. Every time you silence a genuine thought or hide a genuine interest, you chip away at your own authenticity. And the tragic irony of it all is that you never actually feel secure.
Why not?
Because even if the group accepts this fake version of you, you know deep down that the approval is for the mask, not for the real you. So the fear of judgment remains, driving you to wear the mask even tighter. Because if the mask slips, you fear you will be rejected.
That is an incredibly heavy realization. If people only love the mask, you are still profoundly lonely. So this brings us to a crucial turning point in this deep dive. If this fear causes us to hold back and erase ourselves, does that mean caring about what others think is entirely toxic?
Oh, I see.
Like, should the goal be to become completely callous and indifferent? Just walk through life not giving a single thought to anyone else's opinion?
Absolutely not. And we have to be very careful not to swing the pendulum too far in the other direction. Complete, utter indifference to the feelings, thoughts, and opinions of others is the clinical definition of antisocial behavior. It borders on sociopathy.
Right. If you literally do not care at all what anyone thinks, you wouldn't be able to hold a job. You couldn't maintain a friendship or function in a civilized society. You would just be bulldozing over people constantly.
Caring, to a certain degree, is the glue of society. It is the foundation of empathy, cooperation, and social harmony. It is entirely necessary to maintain healthy relationships. You care what your partner thinks because you value their happiness and want to build a life together.
Right, that makes sense.
You care what your colleagues think because you want to be a supportive team member and achieve shared goals. The evolutionary instinct to care about the tribe is not inherently the enemy.
So it is about balance. But where's the line? Because it feels like a very slippery slope. When does healthy social consideration or empathy morph into the toxic, paralyzing, identity-erasing fear we were just talking about?
Psychologists point to a very specific diagnostic red flag, a tipping point. Caring about others' opinions becomes a toxic problem when it ceases to be an influence and begins to dictate your decisions.
Dictate. So it is not just one data point you consider, it becomes the only data point.
Yes. It is what we can call the dangerous question shift.
The dangerous question shift. What's that?
Think about your internal monologue when you are facing a choice. A healthy person considers their own desires and maybe factors in how it will impact their loved ones. But the toxic shift happens the moment you stop asking yourself, what do I want? And you exclusively start asking, what will people think?
Oh, wow. What do I want versus what will people think? That is chillingly clear.
That cognitive shift is the exact moment you lose yourself. It is the moment your internal compass is completely replaced by an external barometer. You are no longer navigating by the stars of your own values. You are just drifting on the winds of public opinion.
I want you, the listener, to really think about this for a second. Think about your last major life decision. Maybe it was a massive career move, taking a new job, or deciding not to apply for a promotion.
Or a relationship decision.
Yeah, staying with someone or leaving them. Or maybe it was something smaller, like choosing a college major, or deciding what kind of car to buy, or a hobby you secretly wanted to try but abandoned. I want you to honestly trace the origin of that decision.
It's a tough exercise.
Whose voice was actually making that choice? Was the driving force, what do I want? Or was the driving force the imaginary crowd in your head? Did you choose that career path because the work actually fulfills you? or because the title sounds impressive when you tell people at a dinner party?
Did you buy that specific car because you like it, or because it signals a certain status to your neighbors?
Did you not try out for that community play because you were busy, or because you immediately pictured the judgmental looks you might get if you failed?
Tracing the origin of our decisions is a very confronting exercise. It requires radical honesty. And what most people find when they do this is that the imaginary jury has a frightening amount of veto power over their lives.
The imaginary jury, I like that.
We construct these complex mental models of our peers, our family, our industry, and society at large. And we run constant simulations of our actions through this imaginary jury before we act. If the imaginary jury boos, we abandon the idea.
The imaginary jury, I love that framing. And the craziest thing about it is that the jury isn't even real. It is a total fabrication. It is our own projection of what we assume other people value.
Exactly.
We are projecting our own worst insecurities onto the faces of other people. We are the judge, the jury, and the executioner of our own desires, all acting on behalf of a crowd that might not even be paying attention.
Exactly. And that brings us to the final and definitely the most liberating part of our discussion. Now that we understand the evolutionary hardware, the neurobiology of the pain, the modern amplifier of social media, and the warning signs of the imaginary jury taking over, the ultimate question is, what do we do about it?
Can we actually turn this off? Can we reprogram the hardware? How do we fire the imaginary jury if we are biologically wired to care?
The reality check is that we cannot completely stop caring. We cannot delete our DNA. Trying to completely eliminate the desire for social approval is like trying to hold your breath indefinitely. Eventually, your biology will override your willpower. You will gasp for air.
So we are destined to care forever.
We are destined to care, but we are not doomed by it. We cannot stop caring, but we can learn to care less. Or, more accurately, we can learn to care only about the right people's opinions. We have to implement extreme quality control over whose opinions matter.
Okay, so how does that work practically?
You fire the anonymous crowd, and you replace them with a very small, carefully selected board of directors.
A board of directors?
Yes. These are the people who actually know you, who love you for who you are. It's not for the mask you wear, and whose core values align with yours. If your partner, or your best friend, or a trusted mentor gives you feedback, you listen. That is healthy.
Right.
But if a stranger on the internet, or a toxic coworker, or the imaginary jury in your head has an opinion, you learn to categorize it as irrelevant noise.
But the fear of the anonymous crowd is so loud. How do we actually quiet that noise?
This is where we need to address a cognitive bias known as the spotlight effect. Understanding this is the ultimate antidote to the paralyzing fear of judgment. We walk around feeling like everyone is scrutinizing our every move. Because we are the center of our own universe, we naturally, narcissistically assume you're the center of everyone else's universe too.
Right. We assume the spotlight is always shining directly on us.
Yes.
If we spill coffee on our shirt on the way to work, we spend the entire day trying to hide it, convinced that the entire office is analyzing the stain and judging our overall competence as a human being.
Oh, I've been there.
If we stumble over a word in a meeting, we assume everyone is mentally cataloging our failure and laughing about it in the break room.
But the research shows our perception is entirely skewed. There is a classic psychology experiment conducted by Thomas Gilovich at Cornell University that perfectly illustrates the spotlight effect.
What did he do?
They had university students put on a deeply embarrassing t-shirt. Specifically, it was a bright t-shirt with a massive picture of the singer Barry Manilow on it.
Okay, yes, walking into a college classroom wearing a giant Barry Manilow shirt is definitely going to make you feel self-conscious.
Exactly. It was designed to make them feel ridiculous. They had the student walk into a room full of their peers, stay for a few minutes, and then leave. The researchers then asked the student wearing the shirt, "What percentage of the people in that room do you think noticed the embarrassing shirt?"
And what did they say?
The students consistently estimated that about 50% of the room was staring at them and judging them.
Half the room. And what was the actual number?
The researchers asked the people in the room, and only about 20% even registered what the person was wearing. The students drastically overestimated how much attention other people were paying to them. The reality is that everyone else is far too busy worrying about themselves to obsess over your choices.
They aren't analyzing your coffee stain. They are agonizing over the awkward thing they said in the elevator 3 hours ago.
Precisely. Everyone is the star of their own movie, which means in their movie, you are just an extra in the background, an extra who is barely in focus.
That is such a profoundly liberating thought. It reminds me of an analogy. Imagine you are standing on a brightly lit stage. You are giving a performance or just existing. You are terrified. You are sweating. You look out into the darkness of the auditorium and you are paralyzed by the fear of the audience's judgment.
Right.
You are convinced hundreds of pairs of eyes are dissecting your every flaw, waiting for you to fail. But then the house lights come up, and you look out and you realize the spotlight isn't on you at all.
It's not.
In fact, the audience isn't even looking at the stage. It is a massive crowd full of people who are all just staring intensely into their own little hand mirrors. They are entirely absorbed in their own insecurities, fixing their own hair, worrying about their own reflections. The judgment you feared was mostly an illusion created by your own anxiety.
The freedom of insignificance, realizing that the crowd isn't watching you, is incredibly freeing. It instantly dismantles the power of the imaginary jury, but just knowing that, logically, isn't enough to change the reflex.
Right.
This leads to the final and most difficult piece of the puzzle, building internal self-worth through neuroplasticity.
Right, because if you realize the external validation isn't real or isn't reliable, you have to replace it with something else. Nature abhors a vacuum. If you aren't getting your worth from the crowd, where does it come from?
If your baseline self-worth depends entirely on the scoreboard, on likes, comments, or the perceived approval of the room, you will always be emotionally unstable. Your internal state will fluctuate wildly based on the unpredictable, fickle whims of others. The goal is to build internal confidence. You have to develop a core sense of value that exists independently of external feedback.
But wait, earlier you said we are biologically wired to need that external feedback. If it is in our DNA, isn't telling people to just build internal self-worth, basically asking them to fight their own biology? How is that actually possible?
It is possible because of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. It is not about flipping a switch, it is about building a muscle. You have to actively train your nervous system that social risk is no longer a physical death sentence.
And how do we do that?
You do that by practicing the question shift we talked about earlier. You have to start asking, what do I want? And then actually honoring the answer, even when it feels terrifying.
So it takes practice. You have to expose yourself to the fear.
Yes, it is essentially exposure therapy. You build internal self-worth by making small, consistent choices that align with your authentic self, even when it triggers that evolutionary discomfort.
Okay, give me an example of that.
Every time you speak your mind in a meeting, every time you wear the outfit you actually like, every time you pursue an interest just because you love it, regardless of what the metrics or the imaginary jury say, you are creating a new neural pathway.
You're rewiring your brain.
You are proving to your own amygdala that you can survive without the crowd's unanimous approval. You let the reflex happen, you feel the spike of fear, but you do the authentic thing anyway.
You let the knee kick, but you stay on the examination table. You acknowledge the ancient instinct, but you use your prefrontal cortex to say, thank you for trying to protect me, but there is no saber-toothed tiger here. I am safe to be myself.
Beautifully put. You don't eliminate the instinct, you just stop letting it drive the car.
Okay, let's bring all of this together, because we have covered some truly massive concepts in this deep dive. We started on the African savanna and ended up staring at the digital scoreboards in our pockets.
It's a long journey.
First and foremost, the biggest takeaway is compassion for ourselves. We care what people think because we are human. We are biologically wired down to the pain receptors in our anterior cingulate cortex to belong and be accepted. So we can all collectively take a deep breath and stop feeling guilty for having the instinct.
The instinct is natural, and it kept our ancestors alive.
But while we cannot delete our biology, we also have to recognize the evolutionary mismatch. We don't live in caves anymore. Exile is not death. We do not have to let the primal fear of judgment or the superficial variable reward numbers on a social media feed control our authentic choices. The goal isn't to become a heartless sociopath. It is all about balance. It is about catching yourself when you shift from what do I want to what will people think. It is about remembering that the audience isn't judging you. They're just staring at their own reflections in their hand mirrors.
And as we leave you today, I want to offer one final provocative thought to mull over. We spend so much of our precious cognitive energy terrified of what other people are thinking of us. We construct these elaborate defenses and wear these heavy masks. But the next time you find yourself holding back, the next time you are paralyzed by the fear of someone else's judgment in a meeting or on a date or online, I want you to completely flip the script. Consider this. What if that person staring at you isn't judging you at all?
Okay.
What if that person is currently holding back their own authentic self, filtering their own words, and hiding their own true nature simply because they're absolutely terrified of what you might think of them.
Wow, that completely changes the dynamic of every room you walk into. We are all just terrified apes in modern clothing, projecting our own insecurities outward onto each other. It is a profound thought. So take a moment today to reflect on your own life. Look at the decisions you have made recently. Do you feel like you care too much about what others think? Is the imaginary jury running your life? Or have you managed to learn how to let go a little bit, to build that internal self-worth muscle and to trust your own voice? Keep questioning those instincts. Challenge the hardware. The spotlight isn't nearly as bright as you think it is. Keep diving deep.